This is Benny Chapman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, withoutyourhead.com.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neil. I'm joined by three makeup artists here. We have Craig Lindberg, returning to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Hey. Say hi, Craig.
Yeah. Jeremy Selenfriend, is that how you say it? I probably should have asked.
Selenfriend, you got it.
All right, Selenfriend, all right. Very good. And Anthony Pepe?
You got it, Anthony Pepe.
All right, I probably should have asked all that beforehand, but it's very cool to have you. That's we're getting close to Halloween, so it's a good time to talk about makeup. Do any of you three do anything special for Halloween, or did you ever do anything special for Halloween, like when you were kids?
I like a nice glittery rouge.
All right, I can see that.
Mineralized, you really catches the light. Nice solid shimmer.
If you can expect any kind of knowledge coming from the three of us, you may not expect that coming in at any time.
Right. Fair enough. I think people are used to that when they listen to the show in general.
I'm a big fan of zipper faces, crow makeups, and the Joker. I think all of them just together, that's Halloween done right. Slap it up on Instagram or YouTube. Call yourself a pro. You got it going.
Well, I think the can in the eye is
can in the eye.
Pencil through the nose.
Pencil through the nose. Always a great one.
Yeah.
Baseball somehow forced through your skull.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that one a lot. Anything Lucci. Yeah. I personally don't like dressing up, though. I feel that I spend more time working on the stuff, so I hate actually wearing the stuff.
Yeah, I really dress up. Last year was actually the first year, I think in my life, I actually did a legit makeup on myself. I went as the Hound from Game of Thrones just because I happened to have a burn prosthetic laying around. I looked up, I saw a wig, that wig right up there above us, that matched, and I had enough scruff going on. I was like, oh my God, I could throw together a solid The Hound costume in like last minute. Went to a Halloween store, picked up some cheap chainmail, and went to a Halloween party that night, and was like, all right, that was worth it. But I hate wearing makeup on myself.
Yeah, I don't like the glue.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? It's what we do for a living, and we're like the grumpy old guys. I don't want to wear this. I don't want frozen in the corner of my eye. We can torture someone else, but God forbid we get it done in our space. When was the last time you tell us it's your eyebrows?
The actors get paid a lot more to wear it than we do to put it on.
Amen. So. Amen. Yeah, and they get the ones that are famous. They get those great hotel rooms too. How's it going? Yeah.
So how did
you basically asking about what we do? Like, do we do makeup for other people, or we do makeup for ourselves? Is that what you're inquiring about?
Really, anything in general. What are your plans for Halloween? I don't know. Maybe with kids. I don't know.
I'm working.
We're
probably working, my friend. Yeah.
I actually got the day off this year because I still got young kids that I every year I go out of my way to get off my job. You'll get there in a year or two when he's old enough to trick or treat.
Yeah.
No, I go for the last couple of years. I go out of my way to make sure I'm not on set that day, just so I can get my kids dressed and take them out trick or treating and enjoy the day. Once they're old enough to be embarrassed by me, though, I imagine that'll go by the wayside.
No, Dad, we're going along. Well, I got an older kid that goes like, I'm not going trick or treating, and his mom's going to go with him. Because we're more likely, we're going to be working. Well, you got a 15-month-year-old.
I got a 15-month-old, so he's dressing up as a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. But I'm actually going to be on set that day, and the makeup,
the Wednesday,
the makeup and hair department, we're doing prom-oween, so everybody has to dress up as like a famous prom character. The girls decide. I'm like whatever. So I'm going to be Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay.
Again, the afro.
I see. Famous
prom thing. I was actually going to go for Teen Wolf. But then I was like, I'm not wearing that shit. Yeah. I'm not going to sculpt the whole thing in like a week and just get onto it, So yeah.
So how did the three of you meet?
We've all known each other.
The bathroom stall somewhere, maybe. I don't know.
One tap under the stall door.
I met Anthony. We did a movie called
Burning Love.
Was it Burning Love?
It became Rockabilly Vampire.
So we did a movie which was released by Trauma, which was acquired by Trauma, which I'm sure your followers are very familiar with, which was
it's now called
Burning Love, which was now called Rockabilly Vampire. And that's where I knew Anthony from. Jeremy, I met at like some convention.
Yeah, once. I mean,
years ago,
the guy I knew until my union interview. I don't think
I interviewed him for the union, and I met him, and I realized he was a bigger douchebag during the meeting than he was usually. So you expect, it's like 10% makeup, and the rest of it's all just ripping on each other. But no, I mean, that's how I got to know Jeremy.
Right. Pepe and Anthony and I used to be indie movie rivals in our early career days. Where like, we were. Not quite big, but big enough on the East Coast where, like, there were 2 or 3 shops that were dominating the indie film scene in New Jersey and New York when all of our other friends were doing, like, actual studio legitimate jobs.
Right.
We were still doing some fun indies, and we would just always go back, oh, Anthony got that one. Oh, Selenfriend got that one. So he can't do anything.
I mean, I met Craig. Craig was on my first movie ever, was Burn in Love. That was the first time I ever met, like, a New York makeup artist. So I'm like, Craig was the god. Was. Now it's fallen from grace. Now he's more just like the mighty of. Now he's more just like a pope.
Like a kid touching pope or something like that, right?
But I met you on the vampire movie, and I learned a lot from you actually just from that alone.
It wasn't a vampire movie.
I don't exactly remember the time I actually met you in person. I think one of the first times we actually worked together was when we were fucking around with Tom Deneer's shop.
Yeah,
those silicone molds on those.
Yeah, Holly was there. I called Holly because you abandoned me. You left me one night. Tom went off to do Blue Man Group in Atlanta.
Yeah, he left the town. He left the state. Yeah.
Our buddy Tom Deneer, another talented East Coast makeup guy. He was doing these just a display piece for a toy fair for Van Helsing. So 2003, I think. I had literally just opened my shop. Tom only got in touch with me because he was trying to call.
I thought it was earlier than that.
No, it was Tom was trying to call Josh, and I hadn't changed over the phone number yet. That's how Tom and I met.
Wow.
Was Tom was trying to call Josh Torrey, yet another East Coast makeup guy that will rag on plenty in his absence. Anthony and I got called in to make these giant silicone columns while Tom was down in Atlanta.
Molds of these. Yeah, he carves them out of like insulation foam.
Mm-hmm. And then we were just doing the molds. Anthony abandoned me one night. This was my first gig. I had no idea what the fuck to do. So I called my now wife, then friend Holly. It was like, come in to help me and give me moral support because I didn't know what I was doing. And Tom came back and he was rightly pissed.
I completely fucked up the mold because one night I had actually gone to the shop to work without Jeremy. And all I remember saying is that, Tom gave us a big bucket of GI 1000 and said, okay, make a mold out of
silicone.
One layer. So, yeah, I made one layer. Paper fucking thin. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is too thin. But you know what? He said one layer. I'm going to go with what he said. So, of course, when he came back and, he pulled apart the mold, it completely shredded. He called me up screaming at me. And the first thing out of my mouth was like, well, what about my money? And he promptly hung up on me. And then I didn't talk to Tom for at least another couple of years.
Yeah, it was about 7 years till Tom got along with me. Yeah. Even though I was like, I was just the guy.
Come on.
Victim of circumstance.
The way I see it, I drove all the way to Brooklyn just to fucking make a mold.
That was a great shop, though. That was his shop in Dumbo. He shared that with Eli and someone else.
That's right.
They did some great shit in there.
So, yeah. So we met all way back. I mean, I met Craig was 95.
Wow.
When we did, because I was my first movie.
Wow. That's why I liked it.
Yeah, well, I started when I was 19. So that was right about the time when I met you.
I didn't really get started until I guess I was 25 or so. I was playing around since I was a kid, but it wasn't anything I realized I could have a career with until this point when just regular college was not working out for me.
Yeah, well, my mom didn't think it was a real job at all.
My parents were pretty supportive. I had no complaints there. They were all for it. They were like, this is what you love. Go for it. So I went to Art Institute of Pittsburgh in 2001. This was the first time I ever really sculpted, started getting into prosthetics. But, I was always into behind-the-scenes DVD stuff, but, never had any inkling as to how to really do it.
Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned being independent rivalries on the, for independent horror. Is there a lot of competition amongst makeup artists?
Yeah, the polite version is yes, friendly competition mostly, but a lot of competition.
Well, it's basically like Craig used to run General Mayhem, and Jeremy was Monster in My Closet, and I was Demonic Pumpkin. What is Monster in My Closet?
I didn't update my adult Pepe effect.
Dude, Demonic Pumpkins is in the grave. But we each had our own pseudo company that would like, bid on these low budget jobs.
I'm a legit LLC. There's no pseudo company.
Well, I'm talking in general. Now that we're all union makeup artists. But back in the Indian days,
rivalry still exists.
It was competition in the sense of like, who could do the job and who would bid the right price for it. And there were certain jobs whenever I couldn't do the job, I would actually say, hey, call this guy or call this guy. So I wouldn't say it's so much of a rivalry. It is more like just, you know what I'm saying? It's like we're helping everybody else out. We're not sitting here like saying like, well, I'm not taking the job, but no one else is getting the job either.
Right. Well, it was a lot of producers would call, and they would, they would never tell who they're calling. So they might call Anthony, they might call Jeremy, they call me, they might call me, and they're sort of, how do you say, probing or whatever you want to describe to be, quoting, like, who could give them the best price for what they're looking for, because they are also running under a certain budget. They may not, so they're looking for someone who can deliver for the best price. We're talking low budget, so they may not be asking for a certain quality as opposed to more price.
Yeah, this was
stuff like this.
These were shoestrings.
So in terms of friendly competition, a lot of times we never knew we were actually competing with each other, because they would never say, hey, I talked to Jeremy and this is the price that he gave me. I never talked to Anthony and this is the price that he gave me. They would say, hey, this is what I got. This is what I want to do. How much would it cost? And a lot of times they would get ideas from other makeup artists and say, well, this is kind of like what we want to do. How much would it cost you? So innocently enough, we were sort of competitive without knowing we were competitive.
That still happens on the studio scale, where you get producers calling you just to bid out to see if the guy that they're actually calling is giving them the runaround on their numbers.
True. It's more about, like, I always think that they kind of want that one particular person, but they just want to legitimize the price that the person
They would
be
remiss if they didn't actually get quotes. Like any contractor you get, I don't just take one guy's number when I'm getting something done in the house. You get quotes. So that's it's just the nature of the business. Right.
And sometimes we've got each other's backs. Like, we'll say, hey, I'll call Craig. It's like, hey, I've got a producer that's probably going to reach out to you. Make sure you quote in this range so that none of us are getting fucked over.
I don't think we ever underbid each other.
No.
We never got that.
I mean, Craig did all the time. But
because I'm cheap.
Craig was the whore.
Yeah, I was definitely the whore, man. Hey, listen, I got a crack and drug habit and a whore habit. I got to pay for that shit. Toothless whore isn't cheap. The idea.
They are. I don't know what they're charging you, but toothless whores are cheap, Craig.
Well, I don't know about your cheap toothless whores, but I want mine with a little bit of sort of like je ne sais quoi. That's all I got to say. But the idea is that as we started, as stop fucking with the shit.
I get my OCD. I'm looking at the shit right on the table.
You have no idea what's going on. We're looking at the dirty table, and Pepe is scraping the goddamn table right now. It shows his OCD is
as we're talking. His OCD is cleaning my
stop
table.
making noise. Well, anyway, the idea. I'm drinking. You want the whistle? Okay. Yes, we are libating as we should give a shout out. So the idea is, and if we're talking over you, we apologize.
Let's give her.
No, it's good.
Oh, wait, okay. Spiced whiskey. Do you want to talk about?
No, I want to talk about the makeup.
Okay.
Never mind.
When we all first started as makeup artists, as anyone would do, you're at a certain level of, let's say, whether it's a 7th level of hell or not. There are those who are looking for people who, because of their budget, are looking for certain people, not necessarily the quality. Like, did you remember when you interviewed Greg Lemberson and you mentioned about my agita with certain people, certain producers and stuff? So a lot of them are looking for not so much quality, but can you deliver this at the price that I'm looking for? So when people start out at a certain level of their careers, they might be saying, I'll do that for free for the credits or something like this.
Right.
And the competition may be a little bit because everyone's fighting to get the jobs and stuff like this because they're a little bit more hungrier. But as the three of us have grown in our business, we have become friends. And as well, we're all sitting here drinking. And I think Pepe's sharpening the blade to stab us in the back right now. But the idea is that we do we'll all call each other to say, hey, listen, are you available? And the idea of the camaraderie has. Craig said too much. Craig, just to wrap this up. Yes, Dick Smith basically believed that you should share the information. Dick Smith is one of the greatest makeup artists of all time.
All true. That's a hell of a tangent.
But what I'm saying is that basically by us sharing the work and sharing the load, we're furthering the industry in New York as makeup artists, so that way LA and Atlanta don't take all the work. Don't go down that path. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
yeah. You just mentioned Dick.
You're going to get off on these real tangents. All right,
that's totally cool. You just mentioned.
Okay.
You just mentioned Dick Smith.
Lollipop, and I'm sitting in the corner. Okay.
All right. You just mentioned Dick Smith. Who are some of your inspirations to get into makeup?
Craig Lindberg.
Absolutely, Craig Lindberg.
He was my inspiration on how to do the teeth the right way.
There's all the historic guys. There's Dick, there's Rick Baker, there's Stan Winston, all the guys that we have to say because they are just
Rob Bottin,
Steve Johnson. They're the guys that we wouldn't be here doing this in any capacity if they hadn't knocked down the doors and paved the way for literally every one of us to be doing this. But there's a lot of other guys, that don't quite get the credit. Those guys were amazing, but the crews they hired, whose names you might not know, but you always saw their faces in Fangoria and Gorazone and Cinefantastique, all the guys they hired that would go on to open up their own shops later on.
Kevin Yeager.
Yeah, Yeager, the K&B guys, like all of them. It was this, they were the roots that started this grand tree that just branched and branched to these amazing artists, so many of whom are still working and dominating the industry now.
There's a lot of makeup artists I love still, that aren't that top of the echelon. Baker. I mean, I love V's work. I love.
But V's top of the game
Greg
too.
Canham is amazing.
Those are still the guys that you think of they're the absolute top of the game. But there's so many names that you don't think
even Jordan Shell. I love his sculpture.
He's an amazing sculptor and a hell of a personality.
Yeah.
But the guys from Odd Makeup Effects or Blue Whale, these guys that you don't necessarily hear about every day, but are
Jonah, right?
Fucking talented. Yeah, Jonah Levy.
Yeah.
Chris Nelson, who just did the new Halloween, was so fucking good.
Yeah.
And
you seen Wayne Anderson stuff?
Well, yeah, Wayne really Toth.
Wayne Toth too.
You don't necessarily hear about them in every. They're not the household names,
right?
But they're just so amazingly talented.
And I love the guys too. Josh Turry is one of the.
Oh yeah, the best.
Jeremy. I love Jeremy's work. I love Craig's work. So all of them are I take. Every makeup artist I know, I take a little bit from and just learn from them and see how they do their styles because it's an art. It's not a factory-made thing. It's an art form. We all follow certain steps, but there's a creativity behind it that I respect.
Everyone's got their own way to the same end goal. I mean, we're sitting in my temporary shop right now, and I was just opening some pieces before we started the show, and Anthony was looking at them going, "Oh, you do this, you do this." There's no secrets. I'm not hiding my molds away and being can't look, this is my technique. Going back to what we initially said about Dick Smith, that's
you share the information, you keep it alive.
Yeah.
I mean that's the idea that there's so many people that hold their information in because they don't want people to know what's going on there, and the conceptual idea of progressing the art of the makeup. If anyone that I have to say that, you look up to and stuff like this are people who are willing to say, hey, listen, guess what I found out? And they have no issues about saying, hey, listen, I found this great way of doing it. Dick was very famous. Dick Smith was very famous about saying, hey, I found this great way of doing, because Dick had no agenda. He had no the idea of saying, well, I found this information out and I'm going to keep it to myself so I can stay the higher echelon and everyone else has to sort of follow my lead. He was like, listen, what I found, and kind of go with that.
But I mean, he was above and beyond. How many stories are there of kids that grew into now famous makeup artists are I just sent him a letter one day and he sent me back a prosthetic and a step-by-step manual, all well before the class he had offered. and just Dick would go above and beyond in taking care of the fans he had that would reach out to him. Like, that was a full-time job in its own right. How he responded to everyone that took the time to inquire. I mean, I took his course in the early 2000s, and I remember one day I was driving home from my, like, whatever my day job was at the time. I think I was selling shoes or something, and I got a phone call. I didn't recognize the number from Connecticut. I answered. He goes, "Hi, this is Dick Smith," and I was floored. I pulled off the road to stop because, like, there was a little bit, maybe. I might have squirted a few.
Did you soil yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, "Oh my God, this is Dick Smith on my cell phone."
That's it.
And we spent half an hour talking. And then he was like, "Look, you're taking my course. I welcome you to call me whenever you feel like it." He goes, "I know a lot of people say that, but I actually mean it." And I did. Like, I never got to meet him in person, but I spent a good chunk of time talking on the phone with him. But any time I ran into a wall that I just couldn't solve, well, I remember the one, he kept me on the phone for 2 hours. I was traveling to Guatemala for a film, and I was like, "Look, I've never traveled like this." And he just gave me the most insane, amazing advice based on his experiences with The Exorcist, traveling to what was that, Iraq?
Morocco?
No, it wasn't Morocco. It was
Iraq, wasn't it?
Iraq. Yeah. And he was like, "Look, you don't want to travel with anything that looks like a makeup case because then it's prone to be stolen." Like, just the most amazingly minute details. He was so happy to share.
I got to meet him. I met him at the Pasadena IMAX.
Oh, yeah?
IMAX.
Awesome.
I flew out there for that. And he was doing portfolio reviews.
Cool.
So I brought my portfolio thinking, like, "Oh, my God, I'm going to meet Dick Smith." And he told me straight up, "This is bad. This is good. This is bad. This is good."
See,
I got the Rick Baker version of that.
Yeah, it was the wealth of information.
You see, that's what Dick was like, if we can talk about Dick Smith and the idea about every makeup artist who knew who he was at a certain generational period, who have such an admiration for this gentleman. The same thing happened to me. He had been doing a lot of things for Makeup Artist magazine, and he started talking a little bit more about health and about makeup at a certain time.
I remember that.
Because he was big into health and staying healthy and all this kind of stuff. And I had sent him a letter about building materials and stuff. And then the phone rings. Same thing happened to me. The phone rings and he goes, "Hi, is Craig Lindberg there?" And I said, "Yes, it's Craig." He goes, "Hi, this is Dick Smith." And my jaw dropped to the ground, and he had me on the phone for about a half hour, and I was talking to him and saying, I said, "I can't believe you're calling me." And he says, "Why?" And I said, "Because you're Dick Smith." And he goes, and he says, "I really hate this bullshit hero worship about me," because he was so human, and he really just wanted to make everyone smarter and everyone better than what they were doing. And he goes, "I really hate this bullshit hero worship that people have about me." And then of course I was like scared because I made Dick Smith curse at me. So I was really mad. But I did get a chance to meet him because he used to teach at yogi school, which is in Japan, which no longer exists.
Oh yeah, I've seen the demos.
And I flew out to Japan in 2000 to hang out with the master, the godfather of makeup, Dick Smith. I had breakfast with him, and the best conversations we had was, if you ever watch the DVD of the making of Taxi Driver, he mentions a certain artist, a certain actor saying, "Oh, he was a perfectionist." And perfectionist is a code word. That means they were a pain in the ass. So he goes, and on the DVD, he mentions, "Well, this actor was a perfectionist about he was. But when he was candid, he goes, this actor was a pain in my ass." But I watched the man do a makeup application, 2 makeup applications. He did an exorcist makeup, and he did an old man makeup. And I remember when he was done, he cleaned all the makeup off this model, and he threw them in the trash. And I go up to him, and I look in the trash bin, and I say, "Are you going to throw those out?" And he goes, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Can I keep them?"
I have this visual of Craig diving for the trash.
And I, at this day, in a shrine with candles and
apple core
and a sacrificed chicken or two, I have the pieces that Dick Smith painted on in a glass case. Because Now, this is the day when he did a lot of stuff with foam latex. This is prior to silicone application. So the idea of looking at someone, and for people who want to know the difference between painting silicone and painting foam latex is an opaque material that you, as an artist, have to paint in such a way that you have to paint it translucent. So here's the master of makeup painting something opaque and making it translucent. And God knows I kept those, and I still have them to this day on my shelf and stuff like this. I still have it. Once in a while, I take it out, rub it against chest. I rub it against my chest, my genitals, whatever you want, and it's just amazing. But this is the guy, because of anyone that has any, the idea behind Pierce and Chaney and the Westmores. Beyond the Westmores, there really isn't anyone that we kind of say that really changed the face of makeup that we could say beyond the Bakers and Steve Johnsons and Botine and all this kind of stuff. Because, we all have our heroes. We all have our inspirations and things like this. And a lot of it comes from us saying, man, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like that guy. And the idea of that's our inspiration. That's our motivation to being who we are and who we want to become, regardless of whether we have people who are throwing roadblocks in front of us. Right. Whether they're a personal person close to us or whatever, because the idea behind it all is that we love what we do. And nothing is going to stand in the way of what we love to do, because we're all fucked in the head, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, I would like to rebut that. I love what I do.
Looking at my rebut, dude.
I love what I do, but if I win this $1.6 billion,
someone won it already.
No, nobody won it.
No, they won it. No. They won in Pennsylvania. No. It's done.
No, dude.
I think it's Tuesday.
Nobody won the Mega
Wait, what's
Millions.
that, Neil?
I think it's Tuesday because no one won. It was $1 billion and no one won, so now it's $1.6 billion. I think it's Tuesday night.
$1.6 billion, and I bought $100 worth of tickets.
Oh my God!
Did I win?
I opened a big ass shop.
I will take this makeup career and say thank you and move on.
See, no, if I ever didn't need to do it for a living, it would go back to being my hobby, because it's always been a part of my life. It was my hobby, then it was my living, and once it became my living, it kind of stopped being my hobby, which is sad.
Right.
But
for sure, I have another hobby.
It would go back to being my hobby if
Masturbating is a hobby. Masturbating is a great hobby.
I mean, when you do it,
you do it well. Anyway, no, the idea is we all found something that we love to do, makeup. Mm-hmm. And it started as a hobby because usually that's how it starts out. It starts as something we do because we always have to have a job that pays money and stuff like this, because everything has to have a beginning.
Right.
And the hobby really, because, if you think about it, what a hobby is kind of like what you love more than anything, and that's what you love to do. You love to do whatever you're doing as a hobby because that's what you do to release stress, or you go home, you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And the idea is, and the idea is but when you start to realize, hey, I can make a living, take care of my family, do all that I need to do, still do what I love, and yes, we got to deal with the bullshit of what the reality of it all is, but none of us here ever say, fuck, I'm done, except for if you win the $1.9 billion.
But you say the same thing if you won $1.6 billion. So.
But I'm still going to do what I do, but I'll just do it sort of like whatever.
You do the ones you want to do.
Yeah, exactly, because it's in us. It's ingrained in our personalities. It's ingrained in the fiber of our being.
I might not go to set 5 days a week.
Yeah, I might not go to set 5 days a week.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because we don't want to do a fucking 4 o'clock in the morning call. Fuck.
Pull the Greg Cannon and show up when I want to show up.
Totally.
Hey, Neil, just do that shit. You're done.
Hi, Neil. You on the phone?
Yeah.
Fucking so sorry.
No, it's perfect. It's much better than when people run and just have yes or no answers. That's much worse. So the
I got a question. Do some people send you texts while you're doing this to say, who are these 3 schmucks talking?
They're drunk assholes in Jersey garage.
I try to avoid the texts and messages during the show. Just so I can say.
I like what they're saying. They're
whole time.
They're like, you know, can you turn these guys off because God knows what the fuck they're talking about. All right, go ahead. I'm sure.
Well, I was just gonna say for each of you, what was it specifically about makeup that did interest you, and why are you so in love with makeup?
Oh, I said it before. The shimmery rouge.
The shimmery rouge. Yeah, but you look so good in it.
Yeah, glitter. Glitter, mother.
I'll start that one. Unlike Jeremy and Craig.
Oh my damn!
I didn't want to be a makeup artist at the beginning. I actually wanted to be a Walt Disney animator, and I was more interested in animation and illustration. And I went to college in Brooklyn, a place called Pratt Institute for Animation. And about 3 months in, I realized that college wasn't working out the way I planned it to. You go from being like one of the top artists in high school to like one of the mediocre artists in college. It starts, playing with your head. So one day I'm in the lunchroom at college and I see a Fangoria magazine, an ad for a makeup school in Orlando.
That's exactly how I did, except it was the Art Institute.
Yeah, so I'm like, you know what, man? Why am I dicking around with Disney? And this is back in the 90s when like Disney was king. You had Aladdin and Mermaid and Lion King and all that. So I ended up going to makeup school. I take all my college money, I go to makeup school, and I did it as a goof. I did it as like, you know what? I don't really know what I want to do with my life. I spent my whole life wanting to be an animator, and I'm just going to fall into makeup and try it out. So I go to makeup school for 14 weeks, graduate, and since I'm from New York City, I went back home and started working on movies, and that's where I met Craig. And every day, for the longest time, I would figure, okay, I'm doing this little by little. I'm doing $50 a day jobs or $100 a day jobs, and you're working your way up. You start meeting more people, and things didn't start exploding until I got into the union. And even then, when I joined the union in 2008, I didn't really start working on union gigs until 2011. So you spend all this time working on movies because you realize at that point, I'm almost 35 years old, 40 years old. I'm going to be 43 now. But it's like you get to that point of your age, you're like, holy shit, I've been doing this so long. I have nothing else to do. I either have to do makeup or I got no job at all.
Oh, I got my fallback career. I'm going to be a mailman. I have said that 100 times.
Government job.
Gigolo.
What?
Gigolo.
No more for Craig.
So yeah, I think that's how it fell in for me, is that I didn't grow, like a lot of makeup artists I've spoken to have like grown up worshiping, the masters and watching, Chiller Theater and all the old stuff back in the day. Like Craig, was around in the 50s when he worked at,
I was down when the dinosaurs roamed the earth.
When Craig was the intern on Wizard of Oz.
The takeaway here is Craig is old.
Yeah. No. He's good. He's still going. He's in his young 60s. He's in his young 60s.
I'm not that old, motherfucker.
So that's how tired.
So was
Neil, when I was in retail for 11 years, and I worked in record stores. I worked in
What's a record?
it was this vinyl plastic thing that you put on a device that spun around.
Frisbee.
Like a Frisbee. It looked like a Frisbee. Sometimes some of the records that sucked we used as a Frisbee. But, I was in retail for 11 years, and one of the last jobs I ever had before actually changing over the makeup is I used to be a game tester. I used to test video games.
Atari 2600?
No, we're talking like Magnavox, Intellivision, and shit like this. No. It was, but anyway, so the idea behind it, but I always did makeup. There was always something that I think I started playing with makeup, but I'm going to date myself really, really far.
Back when you used to
when we used to have to fight mastodons. To do it. I started kind of playing with the idea in 1985, and I did a lot of student films when I started doing makeup and things like this. And actually, if I remember, Undying Love, Undying Love, was it
Rockabilly Vampire?
Rockabilly Vampire.
Yeah.
Well, I said
we are really promoting the shit.
I did terrible. Lamberton did from it. Was kind of a student film, really. It was it was pretty much a student film.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I started. And I remember Lamberton kind of really saying, like, how we met and all this kind of stuff and things like this. So we all had a love for what we did. It was more of an interest or a hobby because as far, at least talking about myself, I was like, is this really going to be a career? Can I make money out of it? To me, it was a hobby. It was fun to do.
Right.
But truth be told, I often would quit jobs, legitimate jobs, to go do movie jobs, which I didn't get paid for.
Totally. I used to be a waiter at the Olive Garden in Times Square, and I quit to go do a movie in Texas.
Yeah.
Because, that stuff was the fake job. The real job was being the makeup artist.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was working at telemarketing. I was a waiter. I was a bartender. I worked in some seedy places in Times Square. I did a lot of shitty jobs.
So you were the guy in the booth instead of...
I was the guy dealing with the booth after the fact.
Oh, so you were the mop boy in the booth.
I wouldn't say the mop boy.
I'm sorry for what I did to you.
No, I took the money. I collected the money.
Mine was pretty straightforward. Since, 1984, 85, I got heavy into this. Fangoria, Gorzo magazines were like my Bibles. I was just insane for horror movies. And I wanted to do it. Yeah, completely. Yeah. I just didn't understand that it was a viable career to do makeup, so I went to college for film school, thinking that I would have to do that and then take a back door into makeup. It wasn't. I went
about the back door.
He's always taking the back door.
These are softballs I give you guys. Underhand lobs. You
definitely got softball.
Well, your softballs are not working hard enough, my friend.
Oh God!
They got to be retracted close to the body.
But it was I always knew this is what I wanted to do. I just didn't understand it was a viable career because I had a guidance counselor in high school that was like, no, there's no future in the arts for you. I like to go back to my high school now, and they're like, yeah, there kind of is, and you can make a really nice living off of it.
Yeah, but one of the references we had back in the 80s was like Rick Baker's Making a Thriller. Remember?
That was the first one
and
I knew.
That's where you really ever saw someone actually doing makeup.
That was the first time I saw makeup being done with prosthetics.
You don't think about it. You're just thinking oh, look, he's gluing. That's just a guy working on the show, gluing something to his face.
I mean, my parents were blue collar workers, and their whole idea. Both my parents were union people. They were not in the business whatsoever. So their fear was whether or not I was able to kind of support myself,
my mom had
possibly have a future in this business. And if I could, and all three of us at this right now, all union makeup artists, all supporting our families, all maintaining our households, all taking care of our kids, would say that if you have a dream, if you have the desire, or if you have the passion, you can have all the things that you could have. You could take care of your family. Yeah. Because if we go back to the union, the idea is that my parents were like, you get in the union, they got this, and stuff like this. And it may be sort of like, blah, 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 in terms of, but this is important issues when it comes to being an adult. You have to sort of take care of your responsibilities to family.
Here's the question for you.
Oh,
for
shit.
You too. Mm-hmm. And since we're all parents, would you let your children work in this industry that we work in?
I would give them the reality of what it entails. And
exactly.
16 to 18-hour days plus commute. And
the failure rate as a makeup artist is higher now.
Well, but here's the thing. I don't know anyone that wanted to get into this industry that was serious about it, legitimately serious, that didn't make a go of it. I mean, we've talked shit about some of the people that we think less of than others, and we're not going to name names live on the radio, and even they
the radio, it's the internet.
On the internet, but even they have successful, 5 to 6 figure income careers.
True.
Yeah.
So if you really work at it, I went to school, the same school, Art Institute of Pittsburgh, Brian Spears, Mike Harvey, a lot of guys that we all came out of the same school. We're all doing really well. We're like the school success stories, working well on big shows, on big.
But out of your class, would you say the failure rate?
But I could recognize the ones that I knew in class that were actually serious about it. In my class, I could think of maybe 1 or 2 other kids that this wasn't just going to be a hobby for. And those are the ones that are legitimately working. They're, the same as me. They were the ones that put in an extra project every quarter. They were the ones that were talking to the teachers, just being that, the annoying kiss ass that was like, well, what if I did this, and this?
Right.
But we are the ones that made it. And like everyone that I could tell in class that was serious about it are making a legitimate career out of it now.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, because I've taught at Makeup Designery, I taught at Makeup Forever,
Christine
and Christine Valmet, and you also taught at Christine Valmet, well, the idea is the passion. Now we talked about a hobby. Remember, a hobby is a passion. Whatever it is, it's a passion for what you do. And the idea of turning that passion, obviously, as we grow up, I look at it as this. I look at it as this. Passion. Sorry. But the idea about turning a passion into something that we love to do, that we want to do, that's an important factor. We want to do this. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether or not we have to work, we have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We always say, it sucks waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but we never say the word, I quit.
No.
Say the job kind of sucks. No. I mean, we're not going to say that.
I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning every fucking day, and
you live 2 hours away from this goddamn city.
Some of us work closer to our job.
But regardless of the fact is, and this is a good thing to say to everybody who really think about that this is what they want to do and really make a serious career, not someone who wants to do something on the internet or something like this, who really wants to say, I want to fucking be a makeup artist.
There's no one with Instagram
and the idea
3 in the morning to do this.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Is the idea of saying that, and we talked about families, we talked about responsibilities, but in some ways, we are not miserable. Well, we're not miserable. It sucks a little bit for what we have to do, but the idea that this is what we love to do. We turn a hobby, which is a passion, into our livelihood. And we're doing it,
I mean, there's no other job I can think of that I would wake up.
I can't do anything else.
Well, besides that, there's nothing else I would wake up.
I'm too old. Well, mailman. I'm too old to be a gigolo at this point. Gigolo.
Nasty. What's his name? Neil. Nasty Neil. Anthony, go ahead.
Where's your brother, Neil?
He's not here this evening. The terrible one is not here this evening.
Oh,
he's out with his girlfriend. Actually,
he's got a girlfriend.
He's had a girlfriend since high school. They've never married, but
I got one of those.
Been together for 30 years.
I didn't mean it that way. You got a girlfriend? You got a blow-up doll? No, I didn't mean it that way. No.
You gotta get this back on track.
I have a girlfriend since high school. I married her.
Yeah, they don't believe in marriage, but they own a house and everything together, so it's all good. They're 30-something years.
Sorry,
Craig, take your lollipop.
I'm just like shit. I'm gonna go away right now.
No, you're good. You're not fired. All right, Neil, go ahead. You're next.
All right.
Yeah, you're next on your show.
Well, since you brought up, Gorezone and Fangoria, did all of you, start off as horror movie fans? Is that how you got into makeup?
I certainly did. I mean, I can remember being 7 years old, watching on the East Coast. We had WPIX 11, which all October long they would have Shocktober. Yeah. Every night they would be edited for TV, 8 p.m. horror movies. That's how I was introduced to Michael Myers, to Jason, to Freddy, and Freddy's the one I fell for, and I fell hard for the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I remember I got hit by a car and I was in the hospital at 8 years old. I got letters from my entire class. Every one of them was a drawing of Freddy, who back then was, as famous as Mickey Mouse.
This is right around Nightmare 3, right?
Yeah, 1986.
Right.
So, he was at the height of his popularity with his 1-900 numbers that were advertised.
Yeah, Freddy was on late TV. I remember
they were advertised during morning cartoons. This ridiculous 1-900 number, and I was obsessed with Freddy Krueger, and just grew up watching horror movies. Scared the shit out of him. I couldn't sleep at night, but for whatever reason, it was the 80s, and my parents were okay, saying, told the video store, what was it called, Movie Time, that I got the R-rated pass. I was allowed to rent them. My daughter now at 9 years old won't go near them, which is, kind of a heartbreaker. But
you kind of want that.
No, I tried. I said, like, if there's a horror movie you want to watch, I will watch it with you.
Has she watched any horror movie yet?
She's done Gremlins. She's done the classic Universals.
We're not talking like she hasn't done The Thing or Texas.
No, she won't. She's too scared of them. I've tried. I've dipped her toes in, but she won't do it.
Good, though. You don't want to, wake up with the middle of the night.
Yeah.
See, now, for me, horror movies were not a thing in my house. My mom was a single mom for a while, and she remarried in '88, so I had a stepfather most of my childhood. But horror movies was not a thing in my house. The only real horror thing I ever got into as a kid was Tales from the Crypt.
I love Tales from the Crypt.
And I fucking loved it.
That was like 91. You're older than me.
No, Tales from the Crypt was like 89 when it started.
All right.
And the thing is, like, I just wasn't into horror movies. I was always Disney animation. I was always into cartoons, comedies, fun movies. Horror movies, I've seen Nightmare 3 and I've seen Child's Play, but
that was a revolutionary
movie. But it's a great movie. But I wasn't into horror movies in the sense of like a fanboy, as like I had never seen Texas Chainsaw, Carrie, Cujo, or even read Stephen King books. When I got older,
Pet Sematary.
When I got older, and I started delving into like some horror movies, I'd watch them as like a goof, but I wouldn't really like oh, I love horror movies. I didn't actually fall in love with horror movies until I started the Horror Film Festival with Mike Hine.
That's funny.
And that was like 2002.
That's late in the game, buddy.
So late in the game. I had already done makeup. And I was like already into, doing effects makeup. And I watched horror movies as references, but I wasn't like, I didn't even own a lot of horror movies. But this guy, Michael Hine, and I started the New York City Horror Film Festival in 2002. And from then, I started watching everything. Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead, Chainsaw 2, Chainsaw 3, Halloween 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would literally watch every horror movie I could get my hands on. Because it wasn't a thing for me when I was a kid. Nowadays, I'm big on the Elm Streets, and I don't watch horror movies as much as I used to, because now being a parent of a baby, I weep for the baby. So it's like I can't really get into them as much.
I'm behind the game. Actually, last night I was in the lab all day, and I was watching everyone on Facebook going like, yeah, I'm going off to see Halloween. I was like, you know what? God damn it. I got to go see this. And I managed to get a sitter, and me and my wife went out to see it, and it was a shit ton of fun. And it reminded me of the kind of horror movies I was watching when I was a kid. It was slow. It was plotting. It was creepy. It was intense. It was really good horror, and we just don't get a lot of that theatrically anymore. Like, there's a ton of great shit hitting Netflix and directed DVD now, but the theatrical horror movies that I used to go to 5-6 times a year as a kid, we just don't get that as much anymore.
So Craig, what was it like seeing Wolfman in the theater?
Well, I remember seeing Nosferatu in the theater.
You were actually the one playing the organ, right?
I was playing some organ, but whatever it was. But, like I said, as a previous interview we had, my mother was a big horror movie fan.
Was she really?
My mother was
that's
fucking...
Cool. I didn't have that.
And I never told this story, but I remember there was a time where, my mother used to work for the school board, Queens School Board, and she didn't come home. And we were like, fuck, did she finally say, come to her senses and say, we're done? I'm done here. But we were like wondering what happened to my mom, and we're like, remember, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to date myself, this is before cell phones and things like this, and we're wondering what happened.
The 80s.
Yeah, it was like, we're like early 80s, and we're like, where the fuck is mom?
Cell phone.
She hasn't called, she hasn't come home. Usually she comes home after her work, and then she comes home maybe about 6 o'clock, and we're like, Mom, where did you go? She goes, I went to Times Square and I saw Dr. Butcher ND in Times Square.
Wow.
This was my mom. And then I said before, my mom took me and my dad to see, like, Zombie and Fulci Zombies and Exorcist and the Omen and Don't Look in the Basement, all these 70 horror movies, and I tagged along. Because back then, as I said, there really wasn't that sort of R and X and triple X. A lot of things like I Eat Your Skin and Beast of Blood was G-rated. Right. And I remember seeing that.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was all G-rated. So I saw like all these Filipino horror movies with John Agar at the RKO Keith in Cannibal, and in the RKO Keith, and we're talking about dismemberment and heads, decapitations and shit like this with my mom.
Wow.
And this was my mom's influence. Now, my parents were blue-collar workers, so they were like, you ain't going to make no money doing makeup. What the hell are you talking about?
Well, but then again, there's no reference, because back in those days,
but they didn't know that there was a union, and if we go back to it, there wasn't a means to make a real solid living about doing it.
That's a perfect example, because like in the 70s, you're watching these movies, no one's thinking these people are making six figures, like whoever did the makeup on Zombie or Suspiria or Exorcist or anything like that, like six figures. Like, they're not making a certain amount of money, and any parent will want their children to succeed to the point where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I want my son to be comfortable. And I know if he wants to be a makeup artist, I will help him, but I will also fear that, because I know damn well I've been doing makeup for almost 23 years. And I'm just at that point where I'm like, okay.
The department hadn't do it.
Yeah, but now it's taken me 23 years to get
I've been doing it for 5 years.
Well, that's a different story. I mean, Blacklist is a whole other thing. But I'm saying, like, it's taking you that long to get to a certain point.
But at what certain point do you dictate whether or not you are, quote unquote, successful? The idea about whether you are, if we go on to the reality of this, are you cleaning your nails with a chisel, dude?
I got nail polish.
Give me that thing. I need to get
nail polish.
I got a daughter. I got nail polish.
Okay, the idea, and if we talk about the idea about the reality of being a makeup artist in the business and in the industry, the idea that if people really want to do it, they can do it. They can really, really do it.
Yeah.
It's the idea of understanding. If we talk about, I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, not years ago, but I was talking to Louis Zakarian. I mentioned Louis Zakarian as being the department head of SNL for the last 25 years. And it's only been about 25 years.
Has SNL been on for 25 years?
Yeah, it's been on, whatever. So, and he's been on longer as the department head.
He's the longest running.
Longest-running department head.
One day that show will get canceled.
That show is over.
Lorne Michaels will die.
It started like October.
Shit, I remember when it fucking premiered.
In that lab, like 10 years after the show was canceled.
Like Neil, does that answer your question?
There was a question?
Yeah.
And now we're into the Saturday Night Live.
Neil's like on the internet playing like solitaire.
He's like, this is great. I don't have to do anything. These jackasses just keep rambling on. I can sit here and play anything.
But, the idea is that, yes, there's a way that you could have all the things that reality requires of you and still fulfill the dreams that you have as a kid. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
He asked about
shit. Did he talk about it? Yeah, he did.
That's a horror movie. You went right back into the hobby. Neil, please, next question before Craig goes off.
Well, just say, like,
sorry. He's got this faraway look in his eye.
No, I think the idea is like the idea of just saying to people that might be listening in that this is what they want to do. Yes, there's a potential to have what they want to do and still be able to take care of the responsibilities of reality.
In this market that we're in now with the internet and all these Instagram makeup artists and all these YouTube makeup artists, do you feel it is harder for someone to get into the industry, as oversaturated as it is now? Do you feel that it is harder for someone to get into the industry and become a successful makeup artist due to social media, Instagram, and everything else they're judged by?
I think.
What do you think, Neil? What do you think?
I would think it's easier to get in, but it's harder to actually stand out or to make a living with it.
That's the answer.
I don't know a single Instagram or Facebook or
I think that goes for like almost everything, since there is the internet. Anyone could just go on YouTube and do something, but that doesn't mean that people are going to watch it or you're going to get anything out of it.
But even there's a couple artists out there with millions of followers that don't have a resume past social media. They might have a sponsorship on YouTube, but like, they're still doing methods that are either outdated or irresponsibly dangerous, and they're selling this to 1 million people, and that stuff kills us. And every year, especially around this time around Halloween, there's always one shiny example that goes around of someone trying to glue real scissors next to their eyes or an actual sharpened aluminum can next to their eyeball.
I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah, there's always something that makes the rounds that we just tear apart because, they might have 3 million followers on Instagram, but that's it.
It don't make it right.
Yeah, exactly.
It don't make it right.
Yeah.
There's still a legitimate way to do things, and I think even the most novice producer can tell the difference between a real artist and a social media artist. Which isn't to say there's some amazing social media artists. Powda comes to mind. I don't know his real name.
I think Moe Chow is pretty good.
Powdah, that guy Powda.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
He's incredible. Does all these exposed anatomy makeups.
There's a couple body painters I see that are amazing too. Yeah,
but they don't work in. It's literally his hobby. He has millions of followers. He has a PPI sponsorship, but he's working with wax. He's not working with anything that can hold up on set. Yeah,
Powda. Yeah,
he's an incredible artist. Powda. But he's not working in the industry.
Interesting.
And conversely, there are people that absolutely should not be working in the industry that have 10 million followers, and thank God they're not.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Does that hurt you guys at all? Like people getting a lot of followers and doing this stuff online? Like how does that affect you guys professionally?
I mean, once in a blue moon, I get a producer. I really once in a blue moon. Like if it's 1 out of 50. But I saw this thing online. You made it look super easy. Can you do this for $50? And there usually just takes a little explaining to be like, well, this isn't really something that could last on set for 14 hours. Right. This isn't something that we could reconstruct for continuity for 3 weeks. It doesn't really hurt, but it does require some more explanation. There's some reality TV shows out there which might have exposed our industry into an interesting light, which maybe some of us here have some experience with. Which made things look a little easier than they really were.
All right. How are we going to broach this subject? I'll come clean. Neil, I'll let Neil start.
It's like an AA meeting.
I'll let Neil start.
I'm Anthony, and I was
I'm just now buzzed enough to talk about it.
So does he talk about Face Off, I assume?
That is what I was gently alluding to.
All right.
Hey, we've got to come
Let's put it out there.
at some point. I expected it to come up. I was on season 1 of Face Off. And, okay, here's the deal. Face Off was probably one of the best things I ever did for my career. Because when I got the call, they were looking for amateur artists, and I recommended a couple of kids I knew to go on the show. 2 days later, I got the call saying they can't find any decent amateur artists, so we're opening up to professionals. So, I had nothing to lose. My wife said, why don't you try out? What's the big deal? No big deal. I tried out for the show, flew out to LA. They put me in a hotel in Burbank for 3 days and did some makeup tests, and fast forward, I got on the show as season 1 contestant. I was on the show I was in Burbank, locked away in a room for about 5 weeks with no internet, no phone, no cell phone, no nothing. And we just churned out makeups. I didn't win the show.
No, you did not.
Yeah, but you know what, motherfucker? Listen to this. This is where it's going to come out. It's going to come out on stage now. All right, so I didn't win. I got booted off on episode 6, and
that over 4.
I thought it was
5. I'm not going to talk about it if you don't want to hear about it. Anyway, I went on the show, but in hindsight, since I was part of season 1, I'd actually become really good friends with V. Neal. And V. Neal is popular, big time makeup artist. She's worked on Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, she worked on that with Greg Cannon.
What?
Oh, yeah, but V worked on Lost Boys. Yeah. But V and I became good friends, and V brought me on to do the second Hunger Games movie in Atlanta for a couple days, and then brought me on to do the Amazing Spider-Man movie in New York. And being a union makeup artist, I hadn't really broken into the union circles yet until kiss my ass. Until I actually got onto the set of Amazing Spider-Man in New York, where I met Craig, who was already in the union, and I met Vince.
You met me beforehand.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'd seen you finally, like, hey, this is Craig. And James Sarzotti, and I'd got into the union circles, and I met Vincent Skiki, who was supposed to be here, but
he's not.
But he's not because he was delayed.
Yeah, I believe.
So the thing is with Face Off is, like, when I was on the show, it was actually about makeup. We were actually just basically doing. You know what, man? I really don't know how to talk. I mean, I can't front Face Off being a bad thing for my career. I got razzed on enough for getting things off, and I've heard it all from everybody. I even heard that, like, they watch it at the SNL makeup studio a lot just to, like, goof on it, and that's fine.
I can't wait till the day they said you're done,
and that's fine. The way I see it. That's the way I see it. Face Off was a good stepping point for me to jump off and get into the union circles, and from there, I met Vincent Skiki. Vincent Skiki recommended me for a Spike Lee movie. Spike Lee, I met a producer, and fast forward a couple more years, and now I'm department heading The Blacklist on NBC, and I've been doing that for the last 5 seasons.
After I got fired from it.
Well, I replaced your boss. I replaced your boss.
My sloppy seconds.
So... yeah, the rivalry still kicks into the So Face Off was not so much like I met some really good people, but the highlight of it is I actually became friends with V. And I can't ever take that away. So Face Off, it was a good thing. But nowadays, Face Off became kind of like a who could build the biggest costume with duct tape.
That started, like season 3, where it just started
season 4, 5, 6, it went all the way to season 12, and it became like this whole monster, who could build the biggest monster with duct tape and styrofoam.
3 was where I tapped out. That's where I stopped watching.
Yeah.
Where it became, there was, I'm not going to take away anyone from that goes on that show, because the contestants have nothing to do with what the producers do.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of Face Off contestants from later episodes who have said that Face Off did nothing for their career, and I feel that was because most of the people that were on Face Off later on have never even been on the set.
Yeah.
At least in my season, every makeup artist, I mean, Connor McCullough and I, who won the show, were actually union makeup artists,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else had been on a fucking set.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they're just grabbing, oh, you want to do makeup?
Can
you hold the brush this way and not this way? Boom, you're on the show.
I mean, that's what
it became.
Josh Torrey, who was also supposed to be here tonight, but failed.
And Josh did audition.
Yes, Josh did.
Yeah.
He got on the show, but couldn't because he was NBC.
Yeah.
Well, I was one of the. You did. I was one of the few that had some scruples and was like,
That's why I can do conflict of interest.
I had scruples, and they were chasing me down and said, hey, I remember a letter that I got said, hey, we can't guarantee you're going to win, but we can promise you that you'll make it far if you come out and audition for us.
That's some bullshit.
Isn't it?
Wow.
Like season 2.
This is season 2, yeah. They were aggressively chasing me, but I had just started working on Boardwalk Empire. I just had a baby, so there was no,
she had the baby.
She had the baby, the lady standing behind me. I had recently been party to having a baby. I just wasn't.
I watched.
I wasn't going to leave the house. I wasn't going to go and be sequestered across the country.
I mean,
there was
literally,
no world.
they locked us up in Burbank for 5-6 weeks, and the only way my wife knew I was still on the show was that they would give us a check for $500 every week for incidentals.
Right.
And they would mail it to New York. So
you weren't even allowed to call?
Nothing. They took my phone.
This isn't Survivor.
What's the point? Phone, they took my wallet. They took everything. They didn't have any clocks in the building, so we never knew what time it was. Like, the world could have blown up, and I wouldn't even know because I'm in Burbank.
So that's what, but going back.
So you were in the room, and that was it? You never were allowed to, well, I assume you were allowed to get out.
Well, the shop that we were at was Greg Cannon's old
Yeah.
We would go there, and then they put us in a 15 pass, bring us back to the house, and then stay in the house, and then bring us back to the shop, back and forth. We never left until we do, like, the location thing where we go to, like, the famous rocks and,
the Star Trek rocks.
The Star Trek rocks. Or we go to, like, the Psycho House.
Bill and Ted rocks, if you prefer.
Like, we do the Psycho House at Universal at 5 a.m. Like, those things we did, but no, we were just in the shop, in the house, and that was it.
So when you kicked off in episode 4,
there were 8 episodes in season 1. I got booted on season 6. Greg Nicotero kicked me off.
I used to quote the thing that was said to you. A vessel of ineptitude. Was that it?
to. Yo, you talking about what's his
Glenn Hetrick. What is that, dude? I used to rewind and play that over and over and over.
I didn't get booted for
Remember,
that
this
makeup.
is all done with love. Dan.
But I didn't get booted for that makeup.
Let me ask you this though. As I take the interview away from you for a second.
That's fine.
When you were done with the show, what did they do with you?
What do you mean when I got kicked off?
Yeah, when you were done.
So since I got booted, episode 8, final episode, and they were bringing everybody back. And I remember that night very
So you
well.
were staying in the in the house?
Here's what happened. That night, when I got booted off, I go to the producer. I'm like, so I'm done. Put me on the red eye. I want to go back to New York tonight. I want to go home. And they're like, well, no, because next week we're doing the final episode where everybody's coming back. So we're going to keep you in the hotel. We're going to keep you in a room in the same complex for another week by myself. I'm like, no. You're going to put me up in the Burbank Hotel. You're going to give me a stipend, and I'm going to go to the movies, and I'm going to hang around L.A. They wouldn't give me a car. But they basically said, lock me up in this hotel for a week. And it was weird because that whole week I would just sit there and, like, go on the internet, and I'd go to the movies, and I'd go to this, and I'd go to that. And then one day I'm actually walking across the street, and I see the van of the contestants leaving the complex to go to Canada Studio. I fucking dive in the bushes because I'm technically gone. But I'm not gone. They kept me there for the extra week.
Oh, because you were a surprise bring back?
Because, like, episode 8,
Yeah.
hey, look, we brought everybody back. And then the first thing Tate Stein says to me, goes, how was New York? I'm like, dude, I've been in a hotel. I've been staying in a hotel for like a week. So they kept me. Because I had gotten kicked out so close to the end of the show. And even though I didn't...
I thought it was much sooner.
About halfway through.
Even though I didn't win the show, I had learned 2 things about myself. One, I had learned
that your friends are merciless.
No, here's the thing, and this is an honest thing for makeup artists. Working in independent world, you only know how good you are from the person who pays you. The person pays you, they like what you did on camera, everybody's happy, boom, you think you did a good job, I'm good with it. I never really had other makeup artists tell me the quality of my work. Because it was kind of like a rivalry thing here and there. It's like, I'm not going to sit there and shit on your stuff, or I'm going to shit on your stuff. And we've all turned out bad stuff. It happens. But it's one of those things where I never have been judged by my peers. I've only been judged by the people that were actually paying me. And Dick Smith once told me, if the guy who's paying you likes it, then that's all that matters. You know? So being judged by my peers, especially V. Neal, telling me that this looks like shit. I don't know what Glenn Hetrick is. I give 2 fucking fucks about him. But V telling me, okay, this is good or this is bad, you take that to heart.
Sure.
And being in competition with other makeup artists from all around the country, some of them were from the Savini school, and you're learning like, oh my God, this isn't good stuff that I'm turning out. Yeah, these directors are paying me, $500, $1,000 for this, but it's not good. It's not up to the standard that you expect. So from Face Off, I had learned that, I learned that I was a body painter, which I didn't really know until I actually did the body paint challenge. But then I learned that I'd seen my work in a different light. And I actually judged my work from this angle as opposed to saying, well, you know what, fuck it, man, I'm getting paid for it, and the guy likes it, so, hey, we're good. And I was set at that level. And you actually said something to me that still resonates to this day. Craig gave wisdom. He gave me probably some of the best advice in my entire career. It was the journeyman classes. They were at Mud, and we were getting the journeyman class to become in the journeyman for IATSE, and we had to do burns that day. And I had churned out this whole 3rd-degree burn, blah, blah, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. But Craig came to me and told me, I really expected better from you. And I still hear that to this day. And every time I do a makeup, I hear you in the back of my head because I hold you to that standard because you're the first makeup artist I've ever met. And I respect that. You make me cry. But it's true, man. It's true. I respect you in that sense because you made me see the makeup in a different light as opposed to saying, well, fuck it, man. The guy's going to pay me, so it's good. You know what I mean? So I took a lot from Face Off. And then, granted, Face Off got me job after job, and I started working more in the union world and Boardwalk and Orange and working with you guys and more in Circle, and then it led up to Blacklist. And that's it, Neil. You like that?
Yeah.
Which again,
I like that a lot, yeah. So
Oh.
I was wondering, like, if you were going to show like what you've done, what would be like the top like 2 or 3 things that you're the most proud of?
That's a good question.
Go ahead, Jim.
That's a good question.
I mean, generally, once I'm a year past a work, I'm embarrassed by it. Like, I always think what I'm doing at the moment is some of the best shit I've ever done. But then I look back on it a year later. You know, looking back, I've been doing this now 15 years. There's a handful of pieces where I can still look at, be like, yeah, I was on my game that day. But I'm usually, you know, I'm pretty critical of myself. Like a year out, I'm like, what was I thinking? I could do that way better now. Even now, you know, I still constantly feel like everything I do, I could have done better and differently. I don't know. I did some shit with Craig. We got an Emmy nomination for it a couple years back on Boardwalk Empire. That stuff still looks pretty decent to me.
The guy with the
burn makeup.
Full body burn.
Was it the guy's head getting cut off?
That was the same episode, yeah. No, a guy that got his head smashed by a wrench.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But Craig and I did a 4-hour full body or half body burn makeup. That still holds up nicely. Yeah, with Michelle Paris, the department head. Let's see. I've been at the show Elementary for like 4 years now, and I've done some shit there that I'm happy
the
with.
rat thing you did.
The rat body. That was a good one. Here's my tiny 9-year-old daughter, so I'm going to stop cursing. Hi. Hello. We're being polite.
Say hello. What's your favorite makeup that Daddy's
Yeah,
doing?
tell me, what's the coolest thing I've ever shown?
Say what's your name and what's your favorite makeup your daddy ever done?
Speak loud into the phone. Loud into the phone.
This is what it's all about. Honestly, this is what it's all about.
Oh, last year I did elf ears for her for Halloween.
Oh.
I like those. Even though she wouldn't let me glue them on her a second time because it was sticky.
Yeah.
Oh, and a couple years ago I had the privilege of working for Dave and Lou Elsey on The Wiz. But I didn't design those makeups. I just got to apply them.
Those are good makeups.
Those were brilliant.
That's the live show you did.
Yeah, the live NBC show. And we slapped those things on in record time and then got denied that Emmy nomination. Oof, that hurt.
Well, you know. All about popularity.
It's all about popularity, and the straight makeup got the nomination.
I'm in the same boat with Jeremy. I'd have to say that I tend to clean out molds of my shop every 2 years because I look at like this. I'm like, here's a burn mold, here's a wound. I'm going to throw this away because I could probably do a better sculpt here and there. There are a couple of favorite pieces I've had in the past. One of my favorite pieces is definitely the body paint I did on Face Off. That was a lot of fun because I actually learned that I was a body painter. I had no idea.
Yeah, you actually have a skill for that. I
didn't give you any kind of credit. But you were
Jeremy actually brought me onto Elementary I played hooky from Blacklist for a day to go do Elementary, do body paint for him.
Yeah.
And the producer actually came up to me and said it was great. So, hey, it's the same thing. The person paying says it was a great job. I have a couple of favorite pieces I've done over the years. I can't really single them out because I always think that all my work sucks. And,
we think that way.
Well, we think that way too.
But
Man.
you know what? It keeps me going as an artist.
90% of the makeup work.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got one. Last year I did or I guess this year, Jesus, time is crazy. I did a show called Dietland, and I did this burn makeup, and it was the most times I'd ever had to do the same makeup. I think we did it, gotta be almost 30 times, I think, between testing and final episode. And I was so happy with it, and it was this crazy show where she was just this gorgeous woman that we just destroyed half her face. I mean, it's so frequently, and she was such a trooper. And, you know, sometimes we would do this makeup and they wouldn't even shoot her. And I loved that makeup. I was really fond of that one. I was really devastated when that show got canceled. I really thought it was going to have some legs.
You were the only one. I don't know. I don't have a lot of favorite makeup.
I mean, the one thing that we think about when you ask us what's our favorite makeup, the idea is that we kind of love all the stuff that we do. And there isn't anyone, I know you asked me this question when we had done our interview a couple of weeks ago. And truth be told, there's a certain amount of like amorous that we have to everything that we do, because there's nothing that we do sort of half, excuse me, sweetheart, but half-assed.
Yeah.
You know,
I use that phrase in front of her a lot.
You know, because no matter what we do, our reputation and our skills and are always on the line. No matter what we do, whether it's a small job or a big job, we always want to present our A game, regardless of what it is.
And this stuff goes public in front of millions of people.
You know, I mean, we're not talking about someone who's watching it like 10 or 12 people. We're talking about people who watch the show religiously. And the last thing we want to do is people to kind of say, hey, well, what the hell was that? So there isn't, and so we have a love affair for every single makeup that we apply, because nothing that we do is sort of trivial. It's all about making it work, making the audience believe in what we're doing. The last thing we want to do is take an audience out of the show that we're doing, and we want them to believe that it just becomes. The way I look at it is that if we do not disturb the flow of the audience's mind, we have achieved the goal of that a makeup is believable. Like the one thing that I never talked about the last time we talked about was one of my favorite makeups of all time, and I'm going to ask this question amongst my colleagues here. One of my favorite makeups of all time is Father Merrill characters in The Exorcist.
Absolutely.
Because
let me just interrupt with a quick story there. I watched that movie, What Dreams May Come, the Robin Williams movie.
Terrible movie.
Terrible movie. I loved it though. And Max von Sydow was in it. Max von Sydow. I watched it, 1998. Big fan of The Exorcist. I'm watching this going, wait, how is he the same age? Until that point, I never knew that he was covered head to toe in prosthetics in The Exorcist. And Dick Smith's makeup was so convincing. I just thought that's how old he was in the original The Exorcist.
Because I remember seeing The Exorcist in the theater, and the conceptual idea that, we were talking about before, about a makeup just, disappears into the storyline. It never becomes an obelisk what people see. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like people just pass it by. They accept it. And to me, the Dick Smith, Father Merrill character has got to be Marion. Are you going to say the same thing about some other shit that I said before, motherfucker?
Neil,
Marion or
Merrill. Language. There is a child here.
I'm sorry, Jamie. I shouldn't talk in front of you like this, right? But the idea, you're in New Jersey. You're going to hear that word a lot. But the idea is that when a makeup is never sort of pointed out as a makeup, it's just accepted.
I agree.
As a storyline.
Oh, good. The dogs.
You know, even though as the makeup artists themselves never get sort of, wow, that's a great makeup. But the idea that it's never really talked about is a sort of testament to the makeup artists themselves, because it's never talked about.
Mm-hmm. See, I feel the same way. Cause, I mean, again, the Dick Smith makeup, like, I didn't realize F. Murray Abraham in Amadeus was an old man.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize that was the same actor for the longest time. We watched Amadeus in school, in grade school, in music class, and I never realized that Murray Abraham was playing both roles.
Right.
I thought it was an old guy and a young guy. Never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got to say about
just invisible makeups.
But, you know, I think, like, you ask us what our favorite makeups are that we...
Yeah, I actually said you're not necessarily favorite, but what you're most proud of.
But I think, like Craig says, we're proud of all of our work at the time, but as artists, we're going to keep moving on. But I think as most makeup artists will always talk about, we will always talk about our favorite makeups, period, in the industry. You know, and that's usually from the ones that are greats, ones that we've grown up with. Like, I love some of the Freddy Krueger makeups from the third one, or I love
even the second one.
You know, I even love Father Merrill or
Marion.
I influence you.
I can tell you the first one of my own that I ever looked at and said, "Oh shit, I might actually have a career here." It was this movie called The Final Patient. I think it was 2004. One of the first big indie films I did that had a then realistic budget, reasonable budget of $1 million, which at the time was the biggest thing I'd worked on. And I did this old lady who had this crazy fake medical issue where her skin just kept, her bones just kept growing. But I saw the dailies of it, legitimate film dailies, and I was like, oh crap, like that actually holds up. Like I'm looking at that and wondering who did it. Like this is the first makeup I've ever looked at and said, oh, a professional did that. Like I actually buy that on screen. I'm not looking at this as some hokey ass, silly indie flick gag. Like that actually looks like it's supposed to look. And even though, it was a crazy over-the-top makeup, it didn't distract from the story. Like, it looked like it was supposed to look, and you bought right into it. So that was the first time in my career I was like, okay, I might actually have something here. I might actually have a skill for this.
Do you ever watch any of your old movies?
Sometimes. It's been a while now.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I put on one the other day, and I turned it right off.
There's one every couple of years comes on cable, this time of year, especially around Halloween, called Blood Night. It's one of my favorite indie flicks of all time.
Right. We showed that at the festival.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, Frank Sabatella, just solid budget.
Velocity Child and all those people, right?
Who?
Blood Night?
Blood Night.
Mary Hatchet.
Yeah. Blood Night, The Legend of Mary Hatchet.
We showed that.
Solid indie slasher flick. And we did some great stuff with practical effects and visual effects. And, it's a silly movie, but if all you're looking for is blood and hits on late night Skinamax, it holds up well. And that's still one that I can still watch and look at and be like, yeah, we did all right with that one.
The idea is that we came from a point in our careers, and then we're at the point of careers that we have at this point. Now that we have, and the idea we came from a point. I know. I really definitely said point twice. At least I didn't say about 1,000 times at this point in time.
Do I say that?
No, I said that. I said that a lot. Merrin, whatever.
Go ahead, Bill.
The idea is that I think we're always proud of ourselves at the point to which we created it, because our minds were in that at that time.
I'm just proud.
Now, I'm going to say crack twice. Anyway, the idea is that we all know we started at a certain place. But as we grow, and as we learn, and as we do, fuck off, you crickbag. Hey, man. But the idea, stop scraping this goddamn
No, shut up.
Keep going. Please. You're doing great.
He took my daughter's octopus and he turned it into a Pac-Man ghost.
You're doing great.
Oh man,
Craig,
he fucking good.
You're in the middle
Anthony
of a
did a Pac-Man.
You're in the middle of a
Pac-Man.
Sleeping on my couch.
All right, is he? Yeah, I think he is. Neil, next
I gotta go help somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow.
So, you talked. You mentioned some makeup taking 4 hours to do and things like that. So, when you're putting on makeup on someone that takes so long, what do you do to make it comfortable for that person? And is any time someone very difficult to work with? That's a good one.
I mean, you know what? There's no way to get it's
that's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, throw on some Pandora station that they like.
Here's the question: what's the longest makeup you've ever done? Was it 4 hours?
I would say about
8.5 hours.
Holy
that's
shit! What's that?
8.5 hours. Way back when the mastodons roamed the earth.
Yeah,
strap in, man.
I had to do a 13-piece prosthetic on an actor's face. It was 13 pieces.
Hopefully on their face.
And suck a dick. And it took that long because it was 13 pieces on their face. It now included a ball cap, and the guy had lengthened hair that had to be put into the cap, and then there was a cap that had to be put on. It was the front of the cap, it was the back of the cap, it was the nose, it was cheek pieces, eyebrow pieces.
Who made all the pieces?
I made all the pieces.
Oh,
so why did you make
all those edges? You had to blend down.
Why did you make 13 pieces?
Because that's how it works. But Dick Smith, did he not say the idea about making it into individual pieces? You want to try this?
No, I want the ball of Coke.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, yeah. We've all stopped drinking because we're responsible adults.
Wait,
I haven't stopped because I'm not responsible.
So, why did you make 13 pieces?
Because that's how
sometimes that's what a cold sore.
Because that's what
a lazy ass.
As he said, that's what a cold.
You ever heard of a horseshoe? Done.
I'm going to say sorry for a second there.
Dude, I work
because I
TV,
gave the man the evil eye. No, the idea, but we were talking about 1987, 88.
I'm with you.
And when we talk about, if we go back to Smith, the concept of the idea about when years ago that makeups were just as one-piece prosthetic, and Smith understood the fact that foam latex at the time would shrink about up to 20 to 30% over. And he formulated the idea of making a multi-piece prosthetic in order to compensate for the shrinkage. So I take it, sir. The idea of the fact that making a multi-piece prosthetic would work better for the actor because he had to be a full-face demon makeup. And not only that, but he also had to be submerged into water. In a foam latex. After working about 12 hours with hair and paint. That was probably the longest. Now, eventually, it got to the point as we went through it all, I got it down to about 2.5 hours because I would pre-paint all the pieces and get that done. But the first initial thought, well, it's always the longest.
I mean, I've done 8-hour body paint, but the average body paint, like, shit, man, the one in elementary took longer than expected.
Yeah, I did.
Well, I brought it. You know what, man? Not for nothing, but I brought it. I'm not gonna. You can edit this part. We're live. No, we're live. But well, never mind. I'll talk about that after the fact. But I mean, I've had the longest prosthetic I've ever done was maybe like 3 hours.
Yeah. I think that burn we did, that was about 4 hours. We had a 3 a.m. call time.
Like I've never had the pleasure of doing an 8-hour prosthetic makeup with like a team of people. Like
I haven't.
I have a team. It's just me.
No, I mean, no. I'm not saying like I've never like when you would see like in the Hollywood like monsters like a Shape of Water or something like that.
You know what I got to
that's a full body, but that's not
body.
like
I've never done it.
I did a 4.5-hour makeup with Bart Mixon, Tom Denier, and Vinny Siki. It was just for a viral video, but we recreated Samara from The Ring using every step that Bart Mixon used in the films. Just for a silly viral video, but actually on Bonnie Morgan, who played Samara.
The actual actress.
Yeah. And we did every step that they actually did. And I was just there for one day. Tom and Vinny, I think, were there for 2 or 3 days. Bart's done a couple of the sequels that was promoting Rings plural, with, a couple of years ago. But like that was, I was amazed at how intense that makeup actually turned out to be. I think we spent 4.5 hours, and even that was still just half her arms, full head, full neck, but half her legs, half her arms. And we spent a solid 4.5 hours just layer after layer of paint and then prosthetic and then paint. And that was amazing.
See, that's the thing that a lot of people may not understand. And I think that kind of comes from edited stuff that's out there, and things like this, where people don't quite understand the length of time and the length of effort that's put into certain makeups, because they condense it down for the time slot that it's in.
Yeah.
That the idea that these makeups are not, and I'm going to tell you a funny story. Years ago, I got a call. I got.
He's going to tell a story anyway.
I'm telling anecdotes.
What time is it?
But years ago, I got a call from a guy that said they wanted
me money.
They wanted me to do this makeup. And they wanted to do something out of Mrs. Doubtfire makeup. And they said, well, how long would that take? And I said, about maybe 4.5 hours. And the guy goes, and this is legit, the guy goes, what? In the movie, he just went in the bathroom and he came out wearing the makeup.
This is ignorant.
And it's just like I kind of was silent. I said, well, that's condensed down to the movie. You understand?
It's a goddamn movie.
Yeah.
It's not
making the mullet and crying at 3 a.m.
The conceptual idea that this is what sometimes as effects makeup artists that have to apply multiple layers of prosthetics that we have to deal with is, if you want to say, no, this is not stupidity, this is ignorance of the fact that people ascertain what they get from what they see without ever doing the knowledge and the studying the what it really works to it. And when we come in and say it's going to take 4 hours to do an application, they go, what are you talking about? It's just like, well, no, when you're talking about Mrs. Doubtfire, there was like at least 13 or more application of pieces that applied to him, to Robert Williams, to make the makeup. And there are tons of, this is the thing that we get sometimes.
Which brings us nicely back to shows like Face Off, not to beat a dead horse.
Here we go.
But legitimately, that's not even nothing to do with you.
No,
it
Face
gives
Off,
the audience perception that these things can be done.
Furthered the belief that, look, I could churn out a makeup. Jeremy and I both work. We all work in television now.
Yeah.
Television is predominantly in New York industry now. We don't have the luxury of churning out a makeup in 6 days and then building it. We have sometimes. Mike Harvey's notorious for churning out makeups the night, even Zakarian. With that
Louis posts shit all the time. Oh, I got called on Friday at 2 a.m. to have something ready for Saturday night.
Dude, did you see the video with the 10-second eyeshadow?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That was amazing.
So, I mean, it's like we're in the industry now where it's like we don't have the luxury of churning anything out over a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We have to do it either the night before.
God, when I have 2 weeks for a makeup, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Like I can relax.
You said earlier in this video, there's like sort of an East Coast, West Coast sort of interpretation between the two. Like I think a lot of West Coasters are understood that they have to build things and they know there's a length of time to which they have to build it.
Right.
The East Coast, because it's a television and because it's episodic, we're talking 13 days, maybe 12 days between
my
episodes.
show was 9 days.
9 days between episodes. So the conceptual idea that you have to turn over makeup, like I remember there's a makeup artist that we know called Stephen Kelly, and he had to not only do, as he was the department head on a show called Fringe.
Fringe, yeah.
He had
the one that broke him.
And he had to, not only did he have to work on it, but he had to make things for the next episode. He was
heading it, right?
He was a department head. He had to make at it, but still he was the effects person that had to make it. And we're talking shows that were like 9 days or 13 days. Episodic is quite different from a film where you have maybe 3 months, 4 months to kind of do everything. We're talking about an episodic that turned over an episode routinely after, if you had the luxury of 13 days. You said you have 9 days.
I have 9 days.
So you're already prepping for the next episode within 1 or 2 days. Let me ask you, how do you do this?
Well, the head I just showed you, I just showed you that I can't talk about because it doesn't air yet, but the head I just showed you, luckily, scheduled out because I was department head and run the effects department. It was
all on you.
It was 5 days of me not needing to be on set.
Yeah, but you actually even got a life cast for it, which in New York television is a rarity.
Well, no, I demanded it. There was no way I was sculpting a head of a guy.
I can't tell you how many appliances I have to run generic because the person hasn't been cast.
No, most of my show,
the episode airs.
Most of my show is flat mold transfers. Because that's all I got a burn scar coming up, flat mold.
I mean, we're sitting here literally before we started. I was like minutes before we started. I was demolding a Y incision that we had our meeting on elementary on Thursday to say on Monday I have to put 3 different actresses through Y incision makeup, which is a full upper body, full corpse makeup. I have to I have to run the pieces. I have to stitch the pieces. I have to get everything ready. And Thursday to Monday, that's 4 whole days, but each piece is 2 hours running, so long as each piece fires perfectly as I run it. I was lucky enough that I went 3 for 3, but that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work
in just a short time. Also, I'm trying to have a life on the weekend, trying to make time for fun things like this, like having a podcast, having an actual family with 2 kids. Like this is a full 7-day-a-week job. I don't remember what the question was. I am sorry.
It's train completely derailed.
It just completely.
Jeremy and I are in the same boat. Jeremy and I are in the same boat where we're building effects, turning them out week by week. The catch is where my situation is, I'm also the department head of the show. So not only am I dealing with the effects aspect of it, I'm also doing budgeting, scheduling, staffing, and all the other bullshit that entails, and hoping the guy on my team is doing her job and making sure that the show is running okay while I'm not there.
How much are you relying? How much do you rely on your team to do this
Well, the week that I had to build that.
Come on, give her a shout out. She deserves it.
Amy Watford is my key.
Oh, I didn't know she was keen. I thought she was so third. I love Amy.
No, well, Stephanie Wise was.
Oh, she had a baby.
She had a baby, so I moved Amy up to key.
Damn babies.
And Amy Watford is amazing. If you ever get a chance to hire her,
I did.
Don't, because she's mine.
I did an indie movie called County Road K. Oh God, when my daughter was first born, so I guess that's 9 years ago with Amy, and I met her. She taught me how to do beauty makeup when I was applying for the union. She came to my house.
Great beauty makeup artist.
Yeah, and taught me all this great shit, and she was fun. And we dropped about a half gallon of blood on the floor of the set we were working on, which was all carpeted. And
I'm gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I have to rely on my key a lot because I'm in the situation where I can't be on set and run the show. And if I go to my producers, I'm like, listen, you guys wrote this whole thing where I have to do this, major effect. And they're like, well, you know what? Just bring more people in, Anthony. What can I tell you? They don't care. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't realize there's nobody available. Like right now, New York is so saturated. I can't bring people in that I can trust.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's amazing in New York right now. It is so, and New Jersey is just past its tax incentive, so it's getting busier and busier. It's great that everyone is working. Even the shittiest amongst us is still working. Really, every day of the week.
Craig.
Good job, Craig.
The shitty to the shittiest.
But at the same time, we're all stretched pretty thin.
Like I can't do any other shows right now.
Earlier this year, I was designing for 3 or 4 different shows, designing the prosthetics for 3 or 4 busy shows. And so I was in the lab, 7 days a week, trying to also be on set as many days as I can, trying to get, Craig, are you available this day? Anthony, can you play Hooky from Blacklist to help me this day? This guy, can you come in? Just it's like trying to schedule a fucking military parade, like just pulling pieces from everywhere you possibly can, working 20 hours a day. It can be nuts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's the best you can hope for.
Is Neil still on the phone?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's still there. No,
We've just been talking to someone. He's cut us off an hour ago.
He might have cut us off, whatever.
No, it's good. It's good. I was just wondering, does anyone ever complain or freak out when they're in the chair and you're doing makeup on them for hours?
I've had that.
I've had that twice in my career. Once was a legitimate allergic reaction to the alginate. That's how long ago that was, that I was using alginate, not body double. That was actually the...
Alginate is an impression material that makes a copy of someone's skin. For those who don't know.
That was the illustrious Tracy Lord.
It's made out of seaweed.
Though. Yes, it is. Tracy Lord for the film Crazy 8. She was so fucking cool. She was amazing, and she had really sensitive skin, and we tried a couple buffer layers, but she still had a pretty intense reaction to the alginate. And we had to pull her out of the cast, and I wound up having to do almost an entire sculpt of her head. And then the other one I had was just a crazy claustrophobic woman who, unfortunately, the cast was necessary.
Were you doing a full life cast?
Yeah.
Just the face?
No, a full cast, and we wound up having to recast her. Yeah. She just couldn't handle it, and she had a full-on panic attack, and I felt so bad because the director was there for it, and was like, I'm so sorry, but this is necessary, and if you can't do it, you can't do the role.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. There's a lot of people who, I find out 9 times out of 10 when I have an actor come onto the show, and they say, oh, I have to take a life cast this person. Casting usually doesn't tell them, oh, you're getting fitted for a scar or something like that. And they don't realize that it's a full head cast or something. The only time I've only had 2 people freak out in my career, and one of them was Method Man from Wu-Tang Clan. And I had to do a life cast on it. But the problem was, and I remember, we were in this room where there's like a bunch of his entourage there, and people and producers. And I'm literally doing an alginate life cast on him in the middle of the room, so everybody sees me from every angle. You totally can't not look at the guy covered in blue.
Yeah.
So he was a little like, the atmosphere about him was like, I'm not doing this in front of everybody. And then the second time I had to do a life cast with Vincent Guasini from, VGPX, whatever it is. And we life casted Jason Mewes from, we went to Kevin Smith's office, and they were making statues of Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes for the comic book store in Red Bank. And Jason Mewes wasn't really up to par for the life cast. So those are the only times I've ever seen people freak out.
I mean, most of the time that I find if anyone freaks out for a life cast, they're okay with the face, but when they get to the ears, I find that's when most of
I was in the ears first.
Because I think that because the idea of the submersion idea of getting
once that hearing is deafened?
is the idea, because if you cut off, when you cut off all the senses to a certain degree, that's when, like, I have...
Well, have you been life casted?
I've totally been life casted.
You've never been life casted?
No, I've been life casted 5 times, and I personally don't have an issue with it.
I'm insane.
I had a life cast done. Right? If you don't know what a life cast is, for the audience out there, it's basically taking a mold of the person's face
or head,
or face or head, or whatever you need to do. The whole thing, when they're in a thing. I think I've had too much of this fucking.
You really should stop drinking the John.
Eventually, you gotta leave.
Yeah, I got to drive back to Long Island. But the idea is the fact that you are submerging people into a material that's going to take a copy of their face. And some people are totally okay with it, and some people have issues with it. I remember having to do a life cast of a guy for Person of Interest that literally flew in from L.A., came to my shop, and had the life cast done. And he lost it. He couldn't take it.
Yeah.
We couldn't deal with it. And we had to take it off his face. And we always say, and I remember working with a bunch of people that say, I can't take it. It's nothing to do with it's just their thing. There's something about it they can't take it.
Some people
because you are completely submerged in a material that deadens their senses. It doesn't eliminate their senses.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they can still breathe.
Yeah. They can still breathe.
Their hearing is muffled. They can't see. They obviously can't taste, and they can't feel anything because the impression material is so thick that when we go to touch them, I actually instruct the actor as I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, now I'm on your eyes. Now I'm on your mouth. Now I'm on your head. And so it's like they know where I'm coming.
Right.
But they lose all sense. It's basically going to your private cave.
Well, but I'm intensely claustrophobic, which I think actually makes me a better life caster because I am always super sensitive to the actor.
I think we should life cast him.
No, for a couple of years now, Josh has been talking about doing an IMAX demo on me.
On you.
And I'm totally game for it because I love the idea of the makeup part.
I love the idea of you screaming and bloody murder.
But yeah, I was always like, Josh, I'm fucking claustrophobic. I don't know how we're gonna get through the life cast. Like, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna just get your whole head as a cowl, like a Batman cowl, minus your face. And then just in like 15 minutes, we're just gonna slap down your face, and you're gonna take whatever anxiety medicine you can take, and you're just gonna power through, and I'm gonna hold your hand.
I remember for Royal Pains, we had an actor that had who didn't tell us she had claustrophobia issues until we were doing her application. She never acknowledged that. So we're doing her face, and she says, as we do, she goes, I want to let you know that I have trouble with claustrophobia.
Yes,
claustrophobia.
My God.
So we're doing her face, and we're doing her face, and we brought the nurse in.
I really like to get late.
So we brought in.
Barn you filled out back.
Listen, the man's trying to do an interview here. So we brought in the nurse who held this woman's hand. I held her hand. My buddy Keith Palmer came in and held her hand and spoke with her constantly, saying, "Hey, everything's cool, everything's okay." And what we ended up doing, we did her face and the back of her head. Now, she had gone through a ball cap. We put her in a ball cap. And we just basically did a plaster bandage back of her cap.
Yeah, that's all you need. You don't need skin.
And she ended up, the strength to her. She went through it. All her anxiety, she went through it. And ironically, all we needed was about 1/8 of her forehead, of her scalp, and to do the effect.
Why were
we did because we did not know. We did not know. Yeah. So I did a full head cast of this woman, and then they said, "Oh, guess what? We're only going to need about maybe her back of her head."
When the communication falls apart, when you need to know exactly.
Well, this is when you put the cart in front of Dante.
Yeah, taking a full life cast of somebody. Yes, Neil, go ahead.
Actually, just how long does that take the life cast for it to set and take it off? Like how long?
Depends on what you're doing.
Honestly, I could bang out. I could probably bang out a full head.
So 15, 20 minutes?
Half hour.
Half hour?
With
Full head? Wow,
with
that's
class
impressive.
advantages. Or you do both at the same time.
I mean, if you want a good head, then maybe 45 minutes to an hour. But, Pepe's level. Yeah.
I don't try to keep my actor as a professional under the material for more than a half hour at a time.
I have a life cast tomorrow. I'm doing just about a full body for a over-the-top muscle suit.
He's lying. Nobody works on Sunday.
That's actually the only time I can get them in. We've scheduled 3 hours for a full head and shoulders, and then a plaster bandage body shell.
Yeah, it all depends on the part you're copying. If you're doing a head, you could probably bang out a head in about an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I usually schedule an hour with bald cap.
I do an hour and a half with cleanup. Come in, hour and a half, you'll walk out the door.
You got to prep, you got to cape them, the whole thing, tape them up. I mean, they're actually under the material for more than like 20 minutes. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, the bald cap itself that's half of it.
Yeah, the bald cap.
The thing that we want to also, for both people who are just starting out, don't go by our numbers.
No,
because we've been doing this for about 20 years experience and things like that.
Take the time.
We know how to kind of smooth it all.
And don't do it by yourself.
No, always have a second set of hands, and don't try to life catch yourself with a pair of straws in a bowl.
Although I'd like to
We all know someone that's tried that.
I'm pretty sure.
Did you remember that video? There was a video, the French video about the people that did
the film?
Yeah.
When they pour on the girl.
They have her head
in the table.
Yeah.
Neil, if we could just divert for a second, there's this great
I think we've
video.
diverged enough. You're practically on this. We should move on to the next question.
No.
Craig is practically kissing the table.
By the way, what are you drinking?
I'll see you at Buffalo Dreams Film Festival.
Oh shit! I'm gonna fall off my stool. All right, go ahead.
What are you drinking, by the way?
We're drinking Icebox Cinnamon Whiskey.
A lot of whiskey.
Revolution Pumpkin Spice Whiskey.
I like that.
Akashi single malt Scotch, and I guess we left
a whiskey
and a bottle of Coke.
That's a whiskey,
and some Coke products by the fine folks at Coca-Cola.
Yeah. All right, very good. Yeah.
So basically, a lot of whiskey and Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's he mentioned Buffalo Film Festival coming up, and my friend Jason, who's coming with me, he's driving in from Kentucky, and he might be bringing some bourbon from Kentucky with him.
Awesome.
Did you say Buffalo Film Festival?
Buffalo Dreams Film Festival.
As in Buffalo, New York?
Buffalo. Yes.
No. What are the Buffalo do you fucking know?
Buffalo is the fucking, I don't know, Iowa.
Is that the animal, maybe?
Are there any buffaloes?
Just a bunch of maybe just a film festival about Buffalo.
I got
you. Right. Exactly.
I'm going to be there. I think I told you that I'm coming in on the Saturday to do Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Do makeup?
Do makeup? Okay. No. But what is like the most difficult technique for you guys? Is there anything like you don't like to do?
Oh, dealing with people.
No. I mean, here's the thing. Okay, to answer the first part of that question, the most difficult makeup to achieve, I would have to say, would be an old age makeup. Only because old age makeup references are evident in society. You will see old people all day, every day. I can create a monster. Anybody can create a monster that's up to their imagination. It could be anything you want, and it could be either great, it could be whatever. Wounds, you could add blood to it. You could do whatever you want. But an old age makeup, I would say, would be the hardest type of makeup to achieve, believably, because we all know what it looks. We all know what it looks like. It's not like I'm pulling something out of my imagination. Old age makeup you see every day. We all know what it looks like.
Because the idea behind it is that if we talk about something that's not. No, I'm not talking about face off. Damn, dude. But I'm talking about the idea about when you sort of create something that's off-worldly. That's off-worldly. That's the idea that's not based in a reality type of makeup.
Yeah, even if we do wounds, you have a liberty with wounds where you could say, like, oh, look, there's a scratch, and then you just add blood to it.
Plus, if you're a Pepe, you just coat it with blood. No one ever gets it.
Whatever behind the edges, it goes in whatever cock balls, and you put blood on it. Yeah, whatever.
Well, the idea behind it is that I think
doing a hospital show.
I think the most hardest makeups to do is something based on the fact that are real. Because when you talk about a fantasy makeup, as Anthony talked about an alien or a creature or a monster
or whatever.
you can kind of take liberties with that because people will accept that, oh, that's just the way the thing looks like. But when you kind of say, all right, okay, I got to take this person and make them look still human, but make them look older or younger or give them a nose to make them represent the person. Like if they're creating a realistic person that exists in the world, if they're playing a character that's real, that's the hardest part because we have to make them look as close as we can to the real person.
It's an illusion. You got to create that illusion. But
and we don't want to look like makeup. We don't want the people in the audience to go like, oh, that looks like makeup. The idea is, it's like I said before, if people just don't even think about it. I know it sounds weird when, as a makeup artist and someone who kind of takes the idea.
Holy shit! I apologize to everyone for Craig.
The idea,
most of all, his wife and children.
Of the idea of when we're trying to create
rolling
something. This is awesome because as we're talking, Jeremy is still working.
I'm sitting here rolling clay, and Craig just slapped my hand.
Because he's doing nothing. Jeremy's doing.
I got deadlines Monday morning.
He's got deadlines. See, this is
making vagina.
This is vaginas.
They always are. But the idea is that
if we're representing realistic characters, and the audience doesn't even think about that they are makeup, and we talked about this before. Even though we might say as makeup artists, "Hey, look at the fuck that I did." But the fact that the audience just kind of goes, really? And we talked about the foreign as the Father Merrin character before.
Meryl.
I said Meryl.
Meryl.
And we talked about the Max von Sydow. Oh, boy. That guy that played the old priest in Exorcist. When we talk about him, that the fact that none of us really acknowledged that he was in a makeup application.
I never would have guessed it.
You know,
and most of that was prosthetic. Was that
it sounds weird.
And prosthetic. No, those are prosthetics.
that the idea that we should be like, oh shit, look at what I can do. I did this guy as a makeup, but the fact that the audience doesn't think about it, doesn't acknowledge it.
I totally agree with you.
Oh shit, they're like, that guy was in makeup?
Yeah, the idea is that makeup is
cool.
Makeup is part of the thing is with any kind of movie making, television making, anything like that. Part of the program is we're part of the machine. We're not the machine. So if we do a makeup, it has to be part of it. The actor has to emote through it. Everything has to be a part of it. If we make a makeup that stands out, then technically we're not really doing our job because you lose. You're not focusing on the acting. You're not focusing on the story. You're looking at the makeup. Even if you do like a swollen eye, which I just did last night. If I do a swollen eye, if the swollen eye plays bigger than the actor, then no one's going to look at the actor. No one's going to listen to the fucking story. They're just going to be staring at the eye.
Right.
So it's got to be a subtlety. It's got to be something that sits there. You're part of the equation. You are not the equation.
Well, the idea is that if the audience doesn't think about it, like I said before, it sounds weird to say, but most people want the praise to what the work that they've done. When someone doesn't even raise a flag, why does the makeup application?
You're right.
It's a sense of the idea that we have made a makeup that someone doesn't even know that's a makeup. It sounds weird that we have done something. And people just kind of sit down, they eat their popcorn, they're drinking their Coca-Cola, and they kind of go, okay. Until someone says, hey, listen, that's a makeup.
Yeah.
Like I remember my cousin years ago saying, hey, Max von Sydow is in makeup. And I said, really? Really?
Wow.
I accepted him as an older guy that was 40, was it 43
He was
when
like
he
in
did
his
it?
early 40s.
He was in his 40s
Yeah.
when he did that.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a 60, 70-year-old
And
gentleman.
if you watch Exorcist, I mean, I never would have guessed that Dick Smith is known as the king of old age or the godfather of old age makeup because he did the best old age makeups. He fooled everybody. Like, every makeup artist out there is always like, Rick Baker was known as the gorilla guy, and Tom Savini was known as the splatter guy. You know what I mean? So every makeup artist has their certain style.
I mean, it's the idea of when makeups don't become makeup.
Yeah.
Is when I think
I don't want anyone ever point out my makeup.
Sort of say to ourselves, we achieved the idea that no one thinks it's a makeup.
Yeah, you don't want people to look at it and say, "Oh, look at that makeup."
As you say before, that we post it on Instagram.
Right.
Look what I can do. So people go, really? That's the makeup. Remember the interview that you and I had a couple of weeks ago when I talked about the eye bags on SVU person. That I was like, no one talked about it. That I said, oh shit. That's awesome because no one chatted about it.
Are you actually working?
It is. The man's working.
Go ahead, Neil. Next question before Craig keeps going.
Well, actually, I think Craig probably needs to take a nap. So I want to thank all three of you guys for coming on. It's been a lot of fun.
Hold on, dude. He's actually signing us off.
Yeah, I think it's been 2 hours. I think it was a lot of fun. And I think before Craig passes out, we should probably wrap it up. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun talking to the three of you.
Thank you very much. So much. Thank you for the time that you put in for us.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Thank you all for
someone a little more coherent than Craig. You give us a call.
Yeah, you give us
No, we do it again sometime. Thanks, Craig, for setting it up. That's very cool.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
You're very good. All right.
Okay, is that it? Right, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So long. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hi, this is Greg Lamberson, and you are listening to Without Your Head. And I have a long history of film without heads. We have no head in Slime City, we have no head in Killer Rack, and we have no head in Johnny Gruesome's. Check out all those headless films.